how are we going to kick this off, Cormac? I think we're just going to jump right into it. That was the intro, me
was
saying that right
I
there.
was gonna say, yeah.
That's how we do things. We've got a special guest. We've been branching out, having guests on the show. I think it probably took us years to even have a guest, and then once we dabbled in that, it's actually been pretty fun. And this is a cool crossover because we've just recently been getting onto YouTube. And so today we're joined by Cam Anderson of BlacktailStudio, who has a huge YouTube channel and is a maker and owner of BlacktailStudio. And maybe Cam, you can give us a little short intro to yourself and tell us about you and where you're coming from.
Sure. Well, like yourself, I'm based out of Oregon. I'm a small one-man woodworking shop. Started making things part-time just to kind of as a hobby, and it turned into a pretty good sized social media channel. So anymore, my wife says I have to say that I'm an actual YouTuber, not a woodworker anymore. So I'm a 40-year-old YouTuber now.
Right.
I will say
Yeah,
this.
you have to put the title first of what you do the most. That is a given. Your wife's right.
Exactly. I'll say this, so I've been watching your videos at home and streaming them on the big TV. And my daughter was just like, oh, let me look. He's like, wow, that's impressive. Over 2 million. So big accolades from a nearly 16-year-old. She's just like, this is amazing.
Well, that's what counts that's what counts to 16-year-olds
Yeah,
apparently. I just wish it mattered to adults.
I know, right? Well, clearly it does matter because you got a pretty huge following, and it's just amazing.
It's good. It's fun. I can't imagine going back to a real job after doing this.
Okay, so I have to ask because listening to and then doing a little bit of like background, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a helicopter pilot for a rescue pilot, correct?
I was the helicopter pilot for the air ambulance.
Okay.
So it's cool to say rescue, but we were basically like an ambulance.
Sure. So it's people ask me this too. It's just like, how did you transition from the military to being an architect? So I'm going to ask you the same questions. Like, how did you transition from being a helicopter pilot to woodworking and saying, yeah, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm going up full-time woodworking.
It was kind of because I was a pilot. One of the best things about pilots is they have really good schedules. And so I had 7 days on. I worked 7 12-hour shifts, and then I had 7 days off. And so I needed something to do with my time. And so I've just always kind of like tinkering, and I was like, I'll start woodworking a little bit. And then I started doing a little bit more and a little bit more. And then social media started to do well. And pretty soon it's like, I might be able to do this full time, which I'd never, ever thought. It's very common in the pilot world to quit being a pilot. You'd think it wouldn't be, but it's really, really common. And I was always like, who would spend all that time and money and all this to just quit? And then I ended up being one of them.
So are you an accidental woodworker then? Is this the kind of thing that you've always had a knack for and that you've cultivated over time, or was this something you just, like you said, you used to fill your time? I'm wondering
I'd say more accidental. I've always liked just messing around with stuff, building stuff. I was never very good at it, but I would in high school, I'd build an aquarium stand for my friends out of 2x4s. So I was the woodworker amongst the group, but I was a bad woodworker and I didn't have like a shop that I could use and all that. I like making stuff.
Yeah, cool. The whole idea of making stuff has been something that we've talked about a lot on the podcast over the years. And architects who do know how to swing a hammer and how to make things typically do a little, well, I hate to say better, but I guess we'll just say better. Because the idea of knowing how things go together is usually a big disconnect. It's not the kind of thing that there's a lot of time, and you might be surprised to hear this, during architectural school. This is not something that there's a big focus on. There's not a lot of hands-on making or building. There's a couple of classes, materials and methods and things like that, where you learn some of the basics. You may learn how to mix concrete or lay some bricks or do something like that. But for the most part, there's not a lot of training. And then in the profession, there's not much field visitation that actually happens because you've got to sit at that desk and you've got to click the mouse and make the drawings, right? And so your time is valuable producing the deliverable that architects have. And so we talk in terms of making like a lot of remodeling and things that we do on the side in our lives, but also just kind of the value that brings to the practice of architecture. I'm wondering from your standpoint, like, Like, do you get a lot out of making stuff with your hands? I kind of assume the answer is yes, but I'd love to hear your side.
I love doing it. Sounds cliche, but if I wasn't being paid, I probably wouldn't be trying to get a video out on my
Right.
regular schedule. But I'd still be in the shop just building stuff or doing stuff. I'd maybe give it away or do whatever, but it's just what I enjoy doing. So yeah,
Mm.
I love it. And I have a question for you about that because I definitely see where you're coming from, but I'm curious, have you ever seen occasions where maybe an architect that doesn't know anything about building can get more out of the builders or more out of the project because he doesn't know it's not possible? Where he'll say, "I need this," and they'll say, "Oh, we can't do it," and then somebody has to figure it out, and then they find a way around it.
Mm. So I'll jump in and answer a little bit of that. It's a little bit of it's a double edged sword there, because sometimes people will just assume, okay, this is how I drew it, this is how I want it built, and the builder is like, no, 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 this isn't how we build it. And if they're not open to listening and not opening to
Yeah,
understanding, they're going to just continue to keep pushing. This is the way I want this to be. And, it's those architects that'll listen and say, okay, this is how we build it. And then the questions are going to be, okay, well, is it going to change the design? Is my design intent going to be different? They're like, no, we'll still be able to achieve your design intent. This is how we build it. And this is how, if you're starting to detail it, this is how you should do it. And for me, I'm a car kid. Both my father and grandfather retired from General Motors. And so I grew up with a wrench in my hand. And so I was always wanting to understand how to learn how to take cars apart, put them back together, and things like that. And so I've always asked the question. I've always been the ones that are hands-on asking the questions. Hey, how do you build this? How do you build this? And, so if I was going to ever attempt to build a table, I wouldn't just say, hey, I'm going to just, out of the blue. I would actually ask somebody who builds a table. How do you build a table?
sure.
How would I go about starting it? What do I need to learn? Where am I going to fail? Where am I going to? So in architecture, you do kind of sort of have that two-track mind. It's the one that's curious about learning and curious about how things go together, and those that are just say, no, no, just do it the way I drew it.
Yeah,
It kind of depends on the project too. I think that a lot of times, like what Cormac said, when the contractor is involved, well, first of all, there's another disconnect there. Like, you don't always have the luxury of talking to a builder during the design process.
Yeah.
And so then you go through all the pains of drawing it up and how you think it could go together. And then they say, that's not going to work. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to collaboratively, or maybe not, redesign based on the way it actually goes. And so there are advantages for people who know how to build during design. And a lot of times that still may not match up with what a contractor is going to do, but then it becomes kind of a problem solving on the job site, kind of an issue. And that, I think, those are pretty incredible opportunities to actually work together where everybody's kind of learning. It's not just one person saying no
sure.
or yes. It's more like, okay, let's figure this out. So there are kind of advantages if you know how some things go together, but also I think those fundamentals then translate into pushing design and pushing materials into maybe a new realm.
Right.
And then there's other kinds of projects where it's just like, maybe it's a K-12 school or something where it's more of a low bid environment. And that is a very different kind of a contractor than a very high end capital A architect and contractor team. So
Sure.
it's all over the map. I mean, there's not a
I,
great
I,
way to answer that.
I've had similar sentiments where I don't take many custom orders anymore, but I feel like I still should take some because if I get too comfortable, then I'm not going to push
Mm,
myself if I have a
mm,
client that's saying, I want this, and me saying, I don't know how to do that, and
yeah.
then having to figure it out, I think is beneficial and interesting even for the videos.
Well, what's interesting so you started in what, 2016?
Yeah,
Okay. And so I'm just assuming that a lot of that was that kind of like trial and error phase. It's just like a lot of times you probably like went through a whole lot of money in tools and materials and
it's
failures.
it's it's all I did. I didn't. I'm a little less like you that you describe how you'll go research and do all this stuff. I'm the guy that I I don't like reading instructions, and it's not because someone said it's some toxic masculinity thing, and I was like, no, I'm just lazy. I just am
Oh,
trying to
oh
like
yeah.
get
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
as quick as I can. And
Yeah.
so I just jumped in trying to do it and failing a lot, and then got a little bit better each time.
Oh,
I actually wrote that down. I said, you don't, I noticed that by watching your videos that you just jump in, you don't overthink it, you don't research it. Like I was just thinking about like my wife, she likes to spend 6 weeks ahead of time, like figuring it out so that she does it right the very first
Mine
time.
too.
And she's I'm very experimental in a similar way to you, maybe not to the extreme that you are, but it's like that those are, I think what's interesting is like you get those happy accidents, to quote like Bob Ross when he's doing the painting on PBS. It's like sometimes you can't plan for that stuff and something unexpected and cool comes out of that, or unexpected, maybe cool. They don't always go together. Right.
But
But it is
I
kind of
have
an
the
interesting scenario to go through.
I have the luxury of not building bridges and buildings that can collapse on
Right.
people. If my table falls over, I'll probably be okay.
Right.
So you guys can't quite wing it as much as me, I assume.
No, not really. No. It's I mean, although, what's interesting, the design process in a lot of cases will take and I'm not sure if it's the same with you, but we see things out there and, we want to maybe mimic it, but we want to maybe expand on it or do something a little bit differently. So it's just like, okay, I see that and I want to do something a little bit different, and don't ask anybody. Don't see if we can try it. We just try it, trial and error. If it works, somebody's going to tell us that, yeah, hey, that works, or somebody's going to say, oh, that doesn't work. And sometimes it
Sure.
costs a little bit of extra money.
I was on a podcast this morning with a friend of mine, and one of the things that we talked about, and then Cormac and I, we just talked about this too last week when we were in San Francisco, but the idea of, and I think this fits really closely with what you do, is like you're experimenting on the fly, on camera, like in the open, and it's a prototype. Like the project that
Yeah.
the thing you're making, you don't know how it's going to turn out 100%. Like you've got some ideas in your head. You don't have it all figured out ahead of time, like we just talked about. And Cormac and I were just talking about this too, because we got to visit an R&D facility in San Francisco where they're prototyping really high-tech stuff. And the idea there that we conveyed back to them was like, you know what? Architecture is too.
Yeah.
Every building is a
Yeah.
prototype, and because it's like a one-off, it's based on some hypothesis. It's like there's these ideas, the functionality, the aesthetics, like all of these things play
Sure.
into it, but you don't really know if it's going to perform exactly as you envisioned it during that design process. And so there's some similarity there, and the scale of the projects is obviously different. But I think part of the education of an architect is getting comfortable with the prototyping of ideas and putting them up on the wall and letting people weigh in on them. And I mean, but that makes it all the way through the design of and the actual like building coming to fruition as well.
I have a question for you on that. Every building's a prototype. I am looking at getting a commercial property or an industrial property, and I got a little bit into the process on one property before. It didn't go through, but my father-in-law has built a lot of buildings and a lot of business, and he was telling me the process and kind of guiding me to some architects. And I was like, well, why do I need an architect? Isn't there like if I just want a warehouse, like, isn't there like a warehouse like catalog? Like there are house catalogs, this? And they're like, oh no, this needs to be custom designed. I'm like, it's a square lot. And so why is everything a prototype in architecture? And I know you can buy a steel building, but when you want like a warehouse on a lot, why is everything a prototype?
Well, so I used to, way back in the day, do more builder home type stuff. Not, let me just, builder home is a bad way of explaining this, but basically you've got these factory built homes, and yes, that portion of it is kind of like a repeatable thing, but the site itself is not repeatable. The site is always different. So you're always going to have to taper anything that basically comes out of a factory to each of the sites. So even if it is like you go out, you buy a kit, you're still going to have to modify it to that. So there is a little bit of prototyping to the site that actually makes it unique to the next Butler building or the next metal building that came out of the shop right after it. Everything is always going to be just a little bit different. Just a little.
Little unique,
Okay.
but to your point, there, especially in like industrial buildings, there's so much repeating
Yes.
of work that's already
Yeah.
happened that people have figured a lot of stuff out. It's
Oh,
when I say every building is a prototype, I think I'm being very general in that sense, but really more towards the architect side of things, not the like Cormac is talking about, these very kind of repeated,
Yeah.
Mhm.
some would say cookie cutter, right? Kind of buildings
Yeah.
that you're talking about.
Sure.
But I mean, it's even like within your process. I mean, you've gone through and you've done this process so many times that a lot of things are second nature to you. And a lot of things that we do are very second nature to us. We'll go to our kit of parts. We'll look at the type of windows, the type of doors, the type of wall construction, and all of that other stuff. And it won't necessarily be assembled the same way, but we're always going back to our toolbox to look at what we can do, what is comfortable to us to be able to produce something that we like, that we enjoy, but is something that isn't like reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. I'll
Sure.
just add on just to put another layer onto this. Building codes change,
Oh
energy
my
codes
gosh, yes.
change.
Yeah.
The plan review person and the city changes and they want something different, or they want to see, or the builder changes and they do it a different way. So you can see how there's a lot of variables in
Sure.
the recipe for a building.
So with that, curious, because I mean, what's very interesting about a lot of the videos you post are not necessarily just the content of the video itself, but the audience interaction. I'm sure you have a blast with the whole comments because some of them you're like, really, this is the question you're going to ask?
I like to highlight those. I feel like people seem entertained by that, so I like to draw attention to
They
those.
do. I mean, the ones that seem to come to the forefront are when people are correcting you on your English, or it's just something that's like wow, this.
No shortage of experts out there, and it's I've even started pinning that comment to the like top comment, so then
Nice.
everybody can reply. And most people are positive,
Oh
so
yeah.
these people pretty quick figure out like, oh, I'm in the minority
Yeah.
here. Like they might think everybody feels the same way as me, and then they have 100 people commenting to them, calling them out. I feel like it's what we need in society today, where we used to get, if you mouthed off on the playground, you'd get punched.
Yeah.
Like you don't have that anymore.
So it's the social punch
Yeah,
because
brutal
I mean,
punch.
well, what's interesting about it is because the reason I kind of brought it up is like it was everyone was saying is like it's like how people do things. We always get these. It's just like, oh, I've been doing it this way for 25 years, and sometimes we're like, well, that may not necessarily be the right way to do it, or anything like that. And you've never shied away from in any of your videos or in any of the comments. You've never really shied away from when somebody tells you, hey, you're doing it wrong. It's just like, no, I'm doing it my way. I'm the one
Yeah,
building this table, not you.
yeah. No, I mean, people tell me like my uncle's a better woodworker and charges half as much, and I'm like, that's not really a compliment to your uncle. Like,
Exactly. It's just like, well, maybe you should send this to your uncle and have a conversation with him about how.
yeah, like, I wouldn't brag about
Yeah, it's
that,
just
but
like,
We as a well, Cormac and I have talked about this many times over the years. We kind of grew up watching shows like This Old House, and
hmm,
and I grew up building stuff with my dad as well, and learning how to use a table saw at way too young of an age and things like that, right? And YouTube's a completely different ball game. It's because of the comment section, and I'm glad you brought this up, Cormac, because it is interesting to me how you're kind of looking ahead at the comments that are going to come from the thing that you just did as you're narrating the voiceover for your video. And it's interesting to me to watch that play out because I mean that's something that like Norm never had to deal with on This Old House, right? He never had to worry about the comments that would come out. People of course would be in the armchair quarterback in their own living room without the internet.
it,
And I don't
it's
know
it's
how it's changed This Old House in the last decade, but that to me is a different dynamic, and you're like taking it head on and addressing it during the
it's
creation
funny you
of your
say that
video.
because speaking of that, someone recently I had said I don't cuss hardly at all in my videos, but there was this moment that it was just kind of a funny thing. It's hard to explain now, but I said the F word, and it was we even bleeped it, but it's obvious that I said it. And someone commented said Norm would never use language like that, and so I replied, and Tim Allen trafficked coke. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So I was like,
I
nice.
mean, it's interesting how you don't take it too seriously, because I think one thing that again, like bringing this back to architecture, like the thing that we learn going through school when you're you're putting some pretty wild ideas up on the wall. And that's a vulnerable state to be in as the designer, to like put your very fragile baby ideas up on the wall and have somebody
Sure.
walk by and like literally rip them down. And so you develop kind of a thick skin. But then throughout practice, I think that that skin once again gets thinner and thinner and thinner, depending on the job and the role you play. It's interesting for me to watch how you deal with the trolls on the internet, who are obviously, there's people who have a very negative outlook or just want to crap on someone in the YouTube comments or any website's comments. And so it's interesting to me to hear like you approach it with like a level of humor, and you're not too serious about it.
Sure. I mean, those ones, I feel like they're easy not to let get to you because they're just so obviously someone's looking to upset someone, and
Hmm.
engaging with them is not gonna get you anywhere in terms of like arguing like, oh no, this is a good job. The ones that will get to me is when early on I've tried to hide mistakes. Like I broke this bow tie going in once, and I kind of like tried to hide it in the camera, and I had people. Of course, that video got like 2 million views, which was a lot for me back then.
Right?
And so all these people are like, "This, you broke this. You're, calling me out for that." And those ones like, "Oh, I did," because I knew I screwed up, and I knew I tried to hide it, and I was
Now you
just
just put
like,
it right on
"Oh,
display, right? Like,
yeah." And
like
so
your
that
latest
one,
denim table one, you're just like, oh shit, like the acrylics all over the garage floor.
yeah.
Oops,
I
right.
mean, most people relate to that stuff because projects have speed bumps, and when they act like everything goes perfect, it's not even fun to watch. You can't relate to it. So
Well, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's the sense of reality. It's just like none of this is easy. And to be able to just like put it out there and say, look, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to drop an F-bomb here and there because, oh crap, it just happens. And it's a sense of reality that you're putting out there, which is far more engaging. In my opinion, it's far more engaging when you're just like, yeah, you know what? People are going to call me out on this one, but this is the way that I'm going to do it. And this is the way I'm going to fix it or not fix it.
it's funny. I very rarely actually get called out when I address it in advance. When I say like, "Oh, this will upset some people," and then everybody's like, "Oh, took my
You're just
thunder."
like, damn it. Now what am I going to bitch about?
Yeah.
Short circuited them. Well, one thing that Cormac and I have been doing for a decade plus is putting stuff on the internet. And so I'm interested to hear from you, like why you decided to do that. You said you got a small woodworking shop. Sounds like you've been doing custom work for people over the years. How did the YouTube component work its way into Blacktail Studio?
Yeah, I'd started making things kind of for fun, and my wife told me that I should get on Instagram in like probably 2016, and I didn't have an Instagram page, and so I signed up for it, and I had a couple weeks later, I'd posted some pictures. I had like 4 followers, and they were all the robots. It wasn't even a real person. I thought you literally had to go ask each person individually, like, "Hello, Cormac, will you follow me on Instagram?" And then, "Thank you,
Yes.
Evan, will you subscribe to me?"
Right?
Like, I didn't know that, like, hashtags, people could find you and search you, like, I didn't know anything. So, she taught me what a hashtag was, she put some deals on some pictures, and I had, like, 30 followers. I was like, "This is fun." So, I started doing what she showed me, and I was pretty good at Instagram. I got to, I think, maybe around 40,000 or so on Instagram. It was like, "Okay, like, maybe I should try YouTube."
Mm.
And all I really wanted was maybe find another customer for selling these
Right.
projects. I was building them in my off time for as a pilot, and I thought, I don't know, maybe I'll get another customer at it. My wife even asked. She said, I told her I was going to start a YouTube channel. She goes, "Good." She goes, "What are you hoping to get from it?" And I go, "I don't know, like
Hmm.
just see what happens."
Yeah.
Open-minded. Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely wasn't. I don't even know if I knew people did it for a living at that time.
Right.
So I definitely didn't have that in store in mind.
So how did the taking the steps into social media kind of expand your network of fellow woodworkers and fellow furniture makers and things like that?
Oh, it's all my only network. I don't, my in real life, anybody that I do know in person is basically only I've met online. I have maybe a couple local companies, but I don't have any friends that woodwork. My dad doesn't really woodwork, so everybody I know is through social media.
Nice.
So,
Cormac and I didn't meet in person for 3 years after we started this podcast.
right.
Right. And we
Yeah.
met on Twitter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a
That's
very
the world we're in.
similar
Yeah,
story.
I
Yep.
mean, and that was it. Is we actually started with Twitter, and we started a network of architects and like-minded people. Just the conversation there between like all of these different architects kind of grew into something that now almost all of our friends that we connect with on a yearly basis when we go to these conferences and stuff are all of these people that we've known for well over a decade. I met a guy in this past San Francisco conference. I met him for the first time face to face after knowing him for about 13 years. And he was just like, and the thing about it is just, and I'm sure it's the same with you, it's just like, you just roll right into the conversations that you've been having.
Yeah.
There's nothing, it's not like that, hi, I'm meeting my pen pal for the first time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's, you just kind of like roll right on into it.
Yeah. No, I have a handful of friends. One friend, we have kind of a group chat of YouTube woodworker guys. And one of them, I feel like I consider him a good friend. And my wife said something about, she's like, but you've never met him. I'm like, no, I met him at the conference. I'm like, oh wait, he didn't go. And so I like realized
Yeah.
like I text him every week, like, yeah, but I've never actually spoken to him in person.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the great thing about. I mean, put the troll in crappy comments aside. Just the fact that you can find people who not only you can network with potential clients. I follow you because I just appreciate the level of craftsmanship, the level of wit. It's just like everything about the way that you kind of present your work. It's genuine enough to just say, yeah, it's just it's a you almost fit the mold of an architect that, is just like, hey, I'm just doing this because I just want to do good work. I enjoy doing this. I love doing this. I mean, this is why Evan and I, for the past 11 years, have been blabbering on bi-weekly and now weekly about our passion about architecture. It's just because we just love to do
Well, I've always wanted to pretend I was an architect. So
it. So did I.
The idea of recording yourself while you're making stuff is different than just making stuff, right? There's another level to it of a little bit of prep. Things have gotten easier over the years with equipment and batteries and things like that to actually do it.
Mhm.
And side story, somebody asked me once in a conference where we were up on a panel, what's your favorite productivity tool? And I said YouTube. Like, there's just an incredible amount of stuff. And it's because of guys like you who are putting a camera as they're making something, and then you're taking next steps. You're going back, you're adding voiceover and things like that so that you can really explain things. Maybe just talk about, like, because I think there's a lot of architects out there who could be showing behind the curtain of like what's going on in the
Mhm.
office of an architect. But there is a level of production fright that exists, right? Because I mean, architects are kind of perfectionists as it is. And I mean,
Yeah,
and so there's that side of it. And another side comment is I think one of the reasons I enjoy watching you is because I feel like I could do that. You make it so that I feel like I could do that. And those are my favorite kind of YouTube channels to watch and learn from. And so to me, like, that's the ultimate goal for a lot of architects, or maybe it should be, is like to get output, showing off their skills, but also disseminating the knowledge and the wisdom that they have of having done this for decades and decades. And it's not as hard as it sounds, but it is also, there is another level to it that is like, if you could make a table, you would do it in half the time, I would think, than if you're filming it too. So there is something
for sure.
something going on there that needs some dispelling of the myths.
Well, my approach, as I've kind of alluded to, is just doing it and just be bad at it and figure it out later, which is the opposite of what you said. A lot of these architects that are perfectionists, and you don't. I'm not recommending one way or another because I know I have a friend that's a YouTuber that he's only ever put out 13 videos in 2 years, and each one has done really well, and he researches each one before he does it, the topic and has a script. It's just the opposite of me. My first video was 10 separate videos because I didn't know how to edit 1-minute clips together. So I uploaded 10 1-minute videos, and
Separate
people are like,
videos.
why didn't you just make this one video? I'm like, I don't know how. And so and then I ended up getting to 700,000 subscribers with I filmed and edited on my iPhone. So
Wow. You can do it.
you don't need production value, and a lot of times I almost worry that production value hurts me at this point because I
Mm.
have pretty good production value. It seems less relatable.
Hmm.
So I don't think it takes a lot anymore. And the voiceover is just makes it easier for me to not have to be on camera explaining everything because I
Right.
can get long winded and I just make things way too long.
Yeah, one of my favorite YouTubers, besides you, Cam, is Casey Neistat. Casey has a rule. This is in one of his like how I make a vlog video. Like he's got this, total self-explanatory video out there. And one of his rules is you get one take. That's it. And so he doesn't stand in front of the camera with whatever he does and do multiple takes of it. If he says something wrong, like it's part of it. If he figures a creative way to edit it is another way to kind of tackle that problem. And I think that kind of fits with what you're doing. You may not outright say that rule, but like you're doing stuff that you're not going to redo and do another take of by, I think, appropriately for the kind of work that you're doing. You're handling a lot of that with the voiceover, but when you're actually making stuff, right? Like you're making it that one time. I'm sure you have mistakes and you'll redo some things, but like
But if I mess up the first coat of finish, I'm not going to strip it down.
Right. Right. Or,
do it again.
oh, wait, hold
Right.
on. Let me put all this bark back on there and scrape it off again.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely, I have a full-time videographer now and it makes it a lot easier, but occasionally, especially when I was recording, I would forget to hit record, count too many times to count. It is so frustrating. You get out of
Right.
this great scene and you're like, so, but if he forgets or it dies, all right, well,
Yeah.
guess we'll
Right.
figure it out.
Right.
That sounds familiar, Evan.
Yeah.
First,
Uh-huh.
our first interview we did with this one guy who wrote a book about leaving architecture and stuff. And here we do this great video, and we've got this me talking with my hands and everything else. And he's like, "Hey, I forgot to do the video side of things."
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yep.
it happens.
Nice.
All right,
It
so
happens.
let me ask you this because I wanted it. So you've got Scott, your new videographer, right? And he's now kind of like part of the videos where he's helping you color match things. How did you as a colorblind person color match and grain match and all of that other stuff before you had Scott helping you out when you were doing it yourself? I mean,
Either poorly or accidentally or with my wife.
okay.
My wife's very good with colors. So she definitely has come in and helped with, is this going to work with this?
I had a buddy in architecture school who was colorblind. He was red-green colorblind. And we were asked to go out and do sketches or basic, these like really polished drawings of things that we saw. And he went and he picked this green building with green trees in the background and everything else. And I'm sitting next to him. I'm like, Steve, how are you going to do this? And he's just like, hold on. And he's got a whole, his toolbox was all of these different green pencils of all the different hues. I was like, well, how do you tell them? He picks them up and he says, basically, he kind of sees variation shades of gray. And if it matches that shade, that's what he uses. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is damn near perfect. This is better than anybody who like actually sees it because you're catching the
He's
tone.
so sensitive to it.
Exactly. It was
Right.
That's funny. I'm not super bad colorblind. I'm bad enough that I fail those colorblind tests every time. But I actually had to take a test with the FAA before I was a pilot,
yeah.
so to prove that I could see the important colors.
Please tell architects what are the important colors.
It is red, green, and white. They shine a light from the tower. It's these light gun signals that in emergencies they'll tell you to do things without the gun. So that's the idea why you have to know. And also it's the marker lights on the aircraft to know if they're
Right.
which way
Which
they're going.
direction they're coming. Well, I'll tell you, you're wrong. The most important color is black to architects.
Dang it.
It's funny is I took a flight test in the Army because I wanted to actually try to transfer into aviation. And I went through everything. And the one thing that I failed was the sneezing in light. They had one where basically if you like sneeze and flinch in sunlight, that it was an automatic failure. And so I do sneeze in, I don't know what it was, but
It's a thing.
I had a reflex that,
Are you sure they weren't just messing with you? They're like, hey, let's see if we can make this guy sneeze.
They-
say you can't be a pilot then.
yeah, so I just went into air defense artillery. So I was like, oh, if I can't fly them, I'll shoot them down.
There you go.
I have a question about materials. I know you work a lot with acrylics. You said you're a woodworker too, right? And a lot of times you're mixing these together. And materials are really important to architects too. I mean, there's a lot of buildings out there don't do justice to what I'm saying right now because there's a lot of stucco buildings or there's very basic concrete block or whatever. And, a lot of times those are decisions based on first costs and maintenance and things like that. But architects take materials really seriously. I'm just wondering like where your love for wood and then maybe expand upon that, like just what are your favorite materials to work with and why. I think that'd be an interesting part of the conversation to move into.
It's one of the questions people ask, like how, as a relatively new woodworker, like how can I make people think that I'm better? How can I be better? And I still feel like I'm a fraud a lot of the times because I just buy the really, really nice wood. I'm
Mm,
pretty good at shopping wood, which isn't anything to brag about. But walnut in particular, the West Coast walnut, it's a lot different than the East Coast stuff.
Mhm.
We
mm,
just get the prettiest wood out here, and I live within a few miles of one of the biggest walnut suppliers in the world, and I have some other places I can go to as well. So just using the best materials, which I'm sure you guys can relate to, puts you that leg above everybody
Oh
else,
yeah.
even if they're better craftsmen. If you have some plain, straight brown walnut, it's not going to be nearly as impressive as some of the stuff that I have to work with.
yeah,
So,
it's interesting,
speaks
right?
to
When
your
you're,
question,
I,
the walnut as far as woods, and I do like using the epoxy on some of those kind of funkier broken pieces because you can use this kind of otherwise slab that would have had to get chopped up into little bits and
mm,
just still maintain the kind of natural look of it.
yeah. I've worked with walnut a few times, and it's just incredible the sharpness that you can get on a cut with a good blade. But it's also interesting. I think you do have to have kind of well, you don't have to, but better tools then almost become a requirement as well. Better blades, sharper blades, truer saws, all of those things. It's not a requirement, but man, it makes the outcome way better. And now all of a sudden you're talking about a whole other ballgame when it comes to a wood shop.
Yeah, it's true. There's a handful of tools, especially. I always tell people if you're spending money a little bit at a time to work backwards from when the piece is finished early on, because you could, if you're rough cutting it, you can use a chainsaw basically, because you're going to be trimming it down later in the process. But when you're doing your finish sanding, that's the last thing that's going to touch it before your finish goes on. So buy a really good sander before you buy a good circular saw because you have plenty of
Mm,
time. You can sand out some of those saw marks if you have to, but you can't fix a bad sander.
yeah.
So speaking of tools, so when you started this from going from a hobbyist to this being your day job, did you ever really factor like, oh my gosh, this is like the cost of all of these tools are amazing? Because I mean, I try to convince my wife, it's like, hey, she's like, do you think that you could build that? I'm like, yeah, but it's not going to be cheap because not only do I have to buy the material, but I have to buy all of I don't have any of the tools. Ask me to fix a car, I've got all of those tools. But ask me to start woodworking, I have
Yeah.
hand sanders and things like that.
My transition was kind of a blurred line from I didn't have a firm. I mean, I did quit my job one day, but I had a lot of the tools already. So it wasn't like, oh, if I'm going to do this, I have to go get a commercial space and buy commercial tools and all that. I didn't really change anything as far as the tools I had at the time. And it's just piecing it together, just like everybody does with your car tools. You didn't go out and buy every single tool that you have one day.
Yeah.
You just piece together over your lifetime. And I do the same thing. I started out with a couple Craigslist tools, probably, well, definitely less than $1,000 of tools before after that $1,000, everything was just sold with profits from furniture I sold or
Mhm.
bought with profits.
So okay, this has always been, I've asked this about a bunch of different people who've transitioned from one career to another. So how did you actually convince your wife, hey, I'm going to give up the security of this job that I've been doing for X amount of years and stuff, and this hobby that I've been doing, this is going to be my new job? How did that conversation go over?
Publicly, I say, oh, my wife is amazing and supported my decision. And that was that. Privately, it was more conversations than that. It took a lot of guts for me to, one, admit to myself that I want to quit my job,
Mhm.
let
Mm,
alone tell her that. And she's she runs her family's business and she has a lot of pressure on her. So I think she always liked, okay, if everything else fails, we'll be fine. Like, you have a job that can support us.
Right.
And so when I really decided I wanted to do it, it was a couple hard conversations, and
mm.
it wasn't a decision we took lightly. And eventually she's like, yeah, let's do it. And then that was March of 2020. I don't know if you remember March of
Hmm.
2020 at
I
all.
do. Just a little bit.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
We try
Things
not
got
to.
really interesting then, and it was like, oh crap. Like, I'm actually kind of glad I did it then, because I don't know that she would have let me if I waited another month or two,
Mm,
because her business went from, like, they didn't know if they were going to be out of business. Her dad started this 30 years ago, and all
wow.
of a sudden it was like, we don't know if we're going to have to close the doors. They had a month or something with 30 some locations
Oh,
and
wow.
overhead and no sales. And then they rebounded and have done incredibly well. But I really feel for her in that time, because she was under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
The whole like every news report in these uncertain times, like you were really feeling that. I mean that I'm sure that was a big
Yeah, and
time of
I will
uncertainty.
say, when I decided to quit, I was making just about as much selling furniture as I was at my job.
Mhm.
And granted, I wouldn't have my job now, so it's not exactly the same when you quit. But I figured with a little bit of YouTube, which wasn't huge at the time, but supplementing it, I felt like I could still be as good as my full-time job, which turns out that YouTube and COVID paired very nicely together,
Yeah.
They
because
did. Right.
everybody was home watching the internet.
Right. Right. So how, when you were making that transition, because this is something that everybody goes through. It's like, because a lot of times people, especially in like architecture, a lot of times people work for larger firms and they always want to be their own boss. They want to go out on their own and do their own thing, but there's always this hesitation. They love the safety net of the job, the big firms, or just working
Sure.
for someone else. Hey, you're going to go out and get those jobs, and now, if I go out on my own, I have to do business development. I have to go find the clients. I have to go do all this stuff. I mean, how many times did you question yourself? Hey, I can always go back and do this. And
If I'm being honest, not once.
good,
Mm,
good.
It was, that first year, like I said, I think due to COVID, everybody on YouTube did really
Mhm.
well. It's just everybody was more eyeballs were on it, and I haven't really taken my foot off the gas since then. And I never considered going back to flying from when I stopped.
YouTube was not a job when we were growing up, right? I think we're all old enough here. Like, and I think what's interesting, I've got kids, and I think about careers that exist, and I think about careers that don't even exist yet that they
Yeah.
could potentially be doing.
Mhm.
And so I'm just wondering from your perspective, jumping into like we're architects. I mean, even podcasting's been around for quite a while. Maybe similar, probably earlier than YouTube, but not by much, right? But the
Yeah.
idea of doing something alternative like that and actually making a living and actually thriving on that, I think is lost on some of the older generations. That could totally include us as well, right? And
Yeah.
the idea of streamers and
Yeah.
esports, and like you could just, the list is super long, right? And I think it's really interesting. I'm just wondering what you think about that, because I'm sure that was part of some of those conversations with your wife. It's like, is this even really a thing? And because we've been trained to think that like there are these white collar jobs, there are these blue collar jobs, and those are all the jobs that exist in the world. What, like, and this is outside of that.
I personally look at it like professional sports, whereas we all grew up decided, wanting to be a professional athlete,
Mm.
and pretty soon that becomes evident whether it's a reality or not.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's a little more muddled of a line with YouTube or things like that. But if it's a job, it'll become evident. If you're not being subsidized by your parents or whoever, your significant other, you don't get to just say, I'm going to be a YouTuber and not make any money.
Right.
If you want to do it, just like an athlete, they have to be able to make a living at it. So
Prove it.
I think
Right.
whether it's streaming or whatever that next job is great. But just like a job, you have to worry about your job security. Is this something that's probably going to be around in 10 years, or how are you positioning yourself to be okay when it's not, popular in 10 years.
Mhm.
Yeah. My youngest just the other day said, "I don't Google for stuff. I go on YouTube and I search there." Right.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely like a wave that you're riding at YouTube, and it's not going to be here forever. Right. I mean, it's just natural with all of these big companies. Who knows when, but
I'm definitely positioning myself so I should hopefully be okay if it's not, but I actually think YouTube will be here forever. Well, not
mm,
forever, but I think YouTube is here to stay in terms of I think it's just
mhm,
getting started. Whereas how many years ago did nobody watch YouTube on their TV?
Right.
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 And how many more years until everybody does? Because still it's not super common for someone to sit down and watch one of my videos on their TV. But I think in 10 years it will be, whereas more and more
Yeah.
people getting, more common using it in, a more frequent manner.
Why do you think we're there, Kim?
Yeah.
What's that?
Why do you think we're there?
Yeah.
No, we're definitely moving in that direction. But
Yeah.
I think architecture is another visual medium, like the kind of thing that you're showing on your channel all the time. This is something that's been lacking from the architectural podcasting space for sure. And so that's one of the big reasons for us to go in that direction.
Well, Evan.
Yeah, and yeah, people fill those niches when they're there, the gaps when they're
Yeah.
there.
I mean, Evan, you said it in that one conference we were at when somebody said, "What is your favorite tool?" And you said YouTube. I mean, I can go down and ask my daughter how she's studying for her math, and she's watching YouTube videos. She's like, I have the teacher's not explaining it the way that I understand it. So she goes out and she scours YouTube, finds videos that helps her understand the math courses that she's doing. And so that's the next round of people who are going to, it's like, hey, if my daughter wants to start building tables, guess where she's going to probably end up.
And I'm in the back of my head, I've been excited for that generation that grew up on YouTube to get mature enough or old enough that they want to watch some woodworking videos,
Mhm.
because I can just barely get down to the 25-year-olds maybe, but I feel like when that next wave grows up, it could be potential new viewers for me more so than there currently is.
Well, I will say this, that apparently there's something shared between my Instagram and my daughter's Instagram and my YouTube and hers, that apparently she's like, hey, my Instagram has been flooded with a lot of woodworking videos. I'm like, oh, really? Well, enjoy them.
They're listening. They're just listening.
Perfect.
So,
How do you pick which project you're going to do next or which direction you're going to go next? Do you weigh kind of like you were just talking about, like the metrics, the algorithm, like the demographics of the audience? Is it purely you're scratching your own itch? Like where's that coming from?
I try more so lately. In the past, it was just building customers' projects and filming it. I've kind of stopped doing that. Not that I will never start again, but I just try to make something interesting. The denim table, I think you mentioned you saw it.
yeah.
Mhm.
That was just something I was like, I think this would be cool. Like
Mhm.
I've never seen anybody try this before, and I think it'll be really interesting. But if you try to follow I hate the term algorithm because that's what everybody uses as a crutch.
Mhm.
But if you try to chase the algorithm or chase the demographics, it's obvious and it won't work. You'll be
Well,
late.
then you're working for something else, right? You're not working for yourself as much.
Yeah, well, I mean, I work hard at things I don't necessarily want to do because it's part about making better content.
Mm.
But no, I just try to make something interesting. And if it's interesting to me, I hope it'll be interesting to other people. I'm doing my next project my first project with zero wood in it. I'm restoring a woolly mammoth
Yeah,
tusk.
that's good.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Evan had already taken the question about the denim out because I wanted to ask about that. Of just like, how did you just decide, hey, let's do that? And you said it was just going to be something interesting. And I will say that it definitely turned out beautifully elegant. I mean, this is definitely
down-
something that I could say that, when we're specifying furniture in, say, a client's home or something like that, you would definitely say, hey, look at this because this is amazing. This would go perfect in this room. But the mammoth tusk, I was just like, all right, I got to ask, like, what are you thinking there?
So I didn't know until I was talking to my sister and my brother-in-law that not everybody thought that it was awesome. Like, because they were like, my dad, he's similar to me, and he thinks it's the coolest thing in the world. And then they're like, "But why?" And I was like, "What do you mean why?" And they're like, and I end up showing them like a finished one, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool." So I'm hoping that I'm not way out of bounds here,
Mhm.
but it just comes out of the ground in this kind of gray, ugly,
Right.
flaky piece. And when it's finished, I think it's
Oh,
beautiful and it's a part of natural history. And
yeah.
so I mean, if the video flops, you can say, well, there we go. But I think it'll be interesting. And I've also, my dream, my goal, my aspirations is to be like, you guys ever watch Jeremy
Oh,
Clarkson?
yeah.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
That guy can review a Ford Fiesta or a McLaren, and it's just as
Oh,
interesting
yeah,
because he's
yeah,
just that great of a personality.
exactly.
And I'm definitely not there yet, but I'm always like, if I can just get to the point where I can keep any content entertaining,
Mhm.
and so that's whether it's a mammoth husk or an original denim table or a walnut table, I'm trying to be able to keep people engaged enough
Right.
to like whatever I'm doing.
Well, and you're also running an experiment the whole time, and failure is an option, right? And I think part of the intrigue of getting all the way through a video, because these are not like super short form, they're longer than a lot of TV episodes are, right? And you always reward the people for getting to the end, right? With
Mhm.
some little special thing, and I love that about it. But the idea that it could not work is intriguing
Mhm.
to keep people watching. And so I'm just when it comes to that kind of stuff, is that something that you're intentionally you're not like intentionally baiting people, but I mean
Sure, I am.
it's always okay, you okay. So it's because you know how it turns out. I mean, I guess you've already lived it and you're in the editing process. So is that part of your storytelling technique then on purpose?
Yeah, I'd say I don't before the video starts, I don't think, okay, how do I
Yeah.
re-engage people this, but if something bad is happening, I'll say, hold on a second, let's film this or let's shoot this, and this will be a good kind of re-engagement, which this mammoth husk has actually been because not a lot that goes into it apparently. Like it's time consuming, but it's dry, you dry it out, you sand it, you put some epoxy in it, you sand it some more. Like those aren't really the most exciting parts of a video. So we had to come up with a few different segments to
Mm.
like, this will be a nice break at this point to hopefully re-engage people and then kind of get them back into the story.
So very much like the kind of like the Clarkson example, because like my wife and I are fully engaged into Clarkson's farm. And it's just like, okay, we know that he's not going to like ultimately fail, but we're going to watch the bungles all the way through.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's going to have a good harvest at the end. And it was the one episode where you're doing the three tables that was after the mishap of the water content and things like that. It had the one table, I think it was the, console table that started to, like, warp and cup and stuff, and
Hmm.
I'm this is it's gonna sound, like, incredibly nerdy, but I'm like, "Oh, shit, what's gonna happen now?" It's just like, is he gonna, like, plane it down where it's gonna be too thin, and now he's basically gonna have to chuck that? It's just like, "What's gonna happen next?" Kind of thing, and it was
You're playing out the
I
scenarios
was
and you're
I
yeah.
was as equally engaged and like, "Oh, crap," like, is is
Well,
he gonna have
well, that
another one?
and that was one of those moments where I actually almost didn't film any of that because I was just like frustrated and was like, okay, I got to go do this. Then it was like, hold on,
Mm.
like this could be an interesting
Yeah.
part. Let's get this in there. And there's also a little bit of the I've showed some mistakes, but now if I screwed this one up, like also like now I go to the from the like oh the guy who figures out his flaws to the guy that screws everything up, and I was like,
Mm.
oh, this is gonna really be
Mhm.
bad if this one can't be fixed.
Yeah, yeah. So
My wife and I like watching the Great British Baking
oh,
Show,
yeah.
and like half of the fun on that show is the epic fails that happen right as they're pulling the thing out to bring it up to the judge's table, and it's like barely balancing on the plate, and something falls off. And I mean that is part of it's real life. Everybody knows that that would probably happen to me
Oh,
too
yeah.
if I was doing it, right? But we were living it vicariously through these other characters.
Anytime I have a big mess up or mishap in the video making process or the project, I always have the what most people don't have as well. It'll be interesting for the video.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Think about it again, though, the genuineness of the art of creating. You're just like, okay, look, creating is a series of trial and error. It's experimentation. Sometimes it's going to go well. Sometimes it's going to not go well. Sometimes, oh, I'm going to say, oh shit, I forgot to check the moisture content of this slab, but I mean, and
Yeah.
you know what? I guarantee you that if the first time I ever try to make a table, not saying I'm going to, the first thing I'm going to check is the moisture content. I was like, oh, I remember Cam kind of, screwed
And
in that one.
And I wish I could say that I did it for the people so they can learn from my mistakes. I really do it for entertainment, but that's a nice ancillary benefit to
Right.
people being able to
Right.
educate themselves.
And that's the thing is just like the truthfulness in craft is that it's not always going to go right. I mean, wood is absolutely the most unforgiving one. You do something, that crack is going to just, you can't anticipate what's going to happen next with that. And the thing about it is as you, what I find interesting about it is like, okay, yeah, you've busted through the backside of this table and you showed how to fix it and showed the right way to fix it, and you never see it again. Or it's just like, okay, now I'm going to make this a feature, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. So there's always these options. Like we don't ever really like actually get the option to like kind of like trial and error and screw up, because then it's a, multi-million-dollar lawsuit for us. So they're like, why is my building leaking? It's just like,
Yeah.
well, I was trying something new with the glass and we wanted an open corner. It's like, yeah, but the open corner doesn't hold back water. It's like, yeah, but it looks cool, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the woodworking world, though, we all do it. I might do it more than other woodworkers, but everybody makes mistakes and has to patch things or color mat. Get the Sharpie out occasionally. To just fix a little bit, and I just show it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, then there's just like the thing about like what your videos kind of show is that the process is long, it's arduous, sometimes tedious, but it's always that end result is just you look at the process, you think, oh, there's no way that this is going to end up being an amazing piece. And then you fast forward to the very end of it and you see this amazing piece. And you're like, oh my Lord, this is absolutely amazing. It's like, how the hell did he pull that off?
It's the Bob Ross effect. That's what we always, you grew
Yeah,
up watching
the
it. And you're like,
happy
why would
accident.
he ruin it? He just put a streak right down the middle of it.
Ex-
And then you're like, oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, that's exactly. It's like, oh, that's what he's doing. Because I'm gonna just throw this out there that never really been a big fan of like people who start doing the flame treatment of wood, like, but I want to see like the natural grain and all of this other stuff. And then the process that you got to at the end with the layers of the clear epoxy to kind of like really show that it was just like, yeah, okay, see, I'm the dumbass for not believing that it's going to turn
I
out
mean,
great.
I've built many things that I didn't like. People say like, that's the ugliest thing you've done. I was like, yeah, I agree. Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
It
yeah,
happens.
like, there's no ambiguity there. It's like, no, that's the worst thing I've ever built. Like,
but
Yeah.
you learned something from it, right? And that's
yeah,
that's kind of like the joy of craft, right? Is learning from it. I sit and I draw all the time, and not just architectural drawing, but like, actually like sketching and drawing and all of that other stuff. And for the longest time, I would never show anybody anything because it was just like, it was crap to me. It was just like, and then I started to like really actually start like putting it out there, letting people see it and all this other stuff. And I'd get comments here back and, back and stuff. And ultimately at the end of the day, it was like, well, I'm not really doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. I-
yeah,
But the thing about it is that I'm learning from it. I'm learning from the mistakes. And it's like, oh yeah, you called me out on that mistake. And I looked down and I was like, yeah, that was a screw up. I was like, you know what?
yeah.
I'm going to try to keep like honing in on that and maybe like get it a little bit better the next time. Or
The ones I don't get though is when people tell me that I'm wrong for putting what the customer asked for on,
yeah,
like, and it's just like, it's just a matter of
Oh,
taste. Like, oh, maybe these legs or this or whatever, or the color of epoxy. They like, oh, that would have been beautiful, but you ruined it with black epoxy. I'm like, well, the customer wanted that for their home. So like,
you.
yeah,
I
this
think they know
happens
what
in
they want.
I
architecture
was going to
all
say
the time.
you literally.
You get judged on the final
Oh my
product,
gosh,
and there's
yes.
no conversation about what the client actually wanted out of it as part of that presentation. And
Yeah.
you get judged on all that. And it's like, well, like they're the ones paying for it.
Right.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that is a huge part of it as well.
Yeah, I was going to say you literally just explained our life in architecture. It's just like
Yeah.
it's just like, why did you do that? It's like, well, because this person who was paying for it wanted us to
Yeah.
do that, and so we did. Was it exactly the way we wanted it? Maybe not, but again, we are not paying for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I will make, the person in the comments, I'll make you exactly what you want. Just pay what they paid.
Exactly.
Yeah. Show me the money. Well, Cam, this has been awesome. You have been very generous with your time. I feel like we're a little bit over, but this has been a fun conversation,
Yeah.
and we appreciate what you're doing. I think like the whole idea of showing your work is something that it means a lot, and I think a lot of people take it for granted. I mean, there's an incredible amount of stuff out there. Your content is part of that. It's a huge resource for people who are into furniture and tools, and we didn't even get to talk about the stuff you're doing outside of YouTube with your website for people to share tools and do really interesting. Like the stuff's expensive. It would be great if there's some like community aspect to that. I think there's a lot of other stuff we could have gotten to, but
Sure.
I appreciate you spending time with us today.
Of course. No, happy to do it. And if anybody isn't interested, I don't make any money from it, but it's makerbook.io is it's kind of like a, I don't know, an Uber for shop space.
Yeah. Good description.
So one last question is the hammer behind you, is that one of your Blacktail Studio brass hammers?
No. So
'Cause of,
everything on this wall was my great grandfather's,
oh, wow.
except for you can't see the chisel, and then this one a viewer made me. It's actually a really beautiful design, so I hung that up
Very
there
cool.
too.
Yeah.
But
Very
that
cool.
my brass hammer isn't cool enough for that wall.
I don't know.
See, I told you that
I
architect's favorite color is black, and that's my background.
yeah.
I felt like I almost went too dark with my room because it's almost black. I had to crank some light on here, so
looks good.
I like the black too.
Well, it's 9:40 p.m. on the Eastern time zone, so it's dark outside, and he's always complaining that I turn the lights on behind me, and
Fair
I
enough.
want you to look
I
good
got
for me.
black. I got blackout shades too. I can go darker.
All right. Well, thanks again, man.
Yeah.
This has been a really fun conversation to have, and we appreciate you making it happen.
abs-
Yeah, Evan Cormack, anytime.
yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks.